This episode of Bankless is brought to you by YEARN. YEARN is a yield farming money robot to do the yield farming in DeFi so you don't have to. YEARN has various products like Vaults or Earn, where in Vaults you can deposit your preferred DeFi token, and DeFi experts have written strategies for this token that you deposit to go and find yield automatically in DeFi. Earn is that same thing, but with stablecoins, where the Earn system will move your stablecoins around from protocol to seek yield from whatever DeFi protocol is offering the most amount of yield at that particular time. Check them out at yearn.finance. A fantastic tool to help you live a bankless life comes from Monolith. Monolith is a smart contract wallet on Ethereum, but it comes linked with a Visa crypto card that links right into the DAI in your smart contract wallet. So it's really spanning both worlds, using smart contract wallets on Ethereum and also a Visa card to purchase groceries or live your life. And so it's a great way to live a bankless life without having to, give up all the normal things that you would need to purchase to live that life. Check them out at monolith.xyz and get your Monolith Visa card sent to you today. ZAPPER is a tool I've been using to help me track my portfolio and all of my wallets across DeFi. You can plug in your addresses into the zapper.fi dashboard, and ZAPPER will give you a report as to all of the assets that you own and where you've placed them in DeFi. You can also invest right through the ZAPPER portal. So if you just don't want to go to all the different URLs for all of your favorite preferred DeFi protocols in order to stick your assets inside of them, you can just go to zapper.fi and click on where you want your assets to go. You can also add multiple wallets in case you use multiple wallets, and you can add them all into one seamless portfolio view by adding multiple wallets in ZAPPER. Check them out at zapper.fi. Unstoppable domains is where we get human readable blockchain domain names that are also completely censorship resistant. One of the really important features about unstoppable domains is that you can set up a website that has a domain that any nation state cannot take down. Really important for being a self-sovereign individual in this world. Additionally, what's also insanely cool about unstoppable domains is that Bitcoiners or any other blockchain can use unstoppable domains to make their Bitcoin address human readable, right? So no longer is this just technology built on Ethereum. Now unstoppable domains brings this to all other blockchains. So you can tell your Bitcoiner friend to send you money to davidhoffman.eth or yournamehere.crypto. Check them out at unstoppabledomains.com. All right, hello everyone. Today is article day. And so I just released this piece on coordination versus defection on the Bankless newsletter, and I'm going to read it. It's I guess one of my longer ones. It's about 15-minute read time, which means it's going to take about 22 minutes to read it out loud. And it is a thought on how the relationships between choosing to coordinate or choosing to defect plays out. And I think it's pretty integral to how the Bankless nation comes to be and how these cryptocurrency systems end up producing the results that they will produce. So let's go into it. Choosing to coordinate. The story of the progress of life is a story of coordination versus defection. Dogs choose to be in packs, birds fly in flocks, fish form schools, and humans form tribes. The world is a rugged, unforgiving place, and your chances of survival are better if you choose to coordinate with others. We don't group into tribes because we enjoy socializing. We enjoy socializing because grouping in tribes makes survival easier. Things are easier in groups. Not only that, but things tend to get easier as groups expand. Over thousands of years, humans went from tribes of 50 to towns of 50,000 to cities of 5 million. This growth occurred because time and time again, groups chose to coordinate rather than defect. At the substrate of this story is the prisoner's dilemma, a thought experiment that illustrates a scenario in which two prisoners are rational to choose defect from one another, even though it means a net worse outcome for both parties. Only by a mutual understanding that playing the long-term game is a better choice and a willingness to sacrifice for this outcome can two prisoners choose coordinate in the name of this potential better future. The path from hunter-gatherer tribes of 50 to cities of 5 million was not a linear path of people finding better and stronger ways to coordinate. It was a long, winding, curving, detouring path of defection, spying, misinformation, malice, aggression, violence, and then eventually coordination. Every single instance of defection, theft, cheating, sabotage, treason, murder, oppression, genocide, or war was eventually overwritten by coordinating around those outcomes. Looking into history, one can claim that humanity is using the planet as one giant sandbox of coordination experimentation in an attempt to create the largest possible coordinating group. From a previous article of mine at Bankless Nation. If someone were to ask us, what are we doing here? Humans could answer, we're trying to get coordinated. Or perhaps humans first need to get coordinated so they can begin to formulate an answer to the question, what is our collective purpose? Either way, our prime objective as a species is to create an organizational structure that can enable coordination on a large enough scale so that we can begin to collectively work towards a common goal. A group is formed when rewards for coordinating together are greater than the rewards for defecting. Part of the incentive to choose to coordinate versus defect is that groups are able to coordinate themselves into a better world. The product of good coordination is the ability to manifest the rewards for coordinating in the first place. Currently, the nation-state is the largest vehicle of human coordination. The nation-state has achieved this by leveraging strong defection prevention strategies, in which the individuals of a nation are highly incentivized to follow the rules of coordination that ultimately compose the state as a whole. Fines, jail, prison, and capital punishment are all tools leveraged by the state to generate coordination incentives that significantly outweigh defection incentives. Hobbes' Leviathan is an illustration of how the nation-state stays composed as a unified body. He claims that a strong centralized executive leadership, which has a monopoly on physical force and violence, is the necessary tool for enforcing the social contract of a nation. The combination of accessing the upside of coordination with the nation-state, in addition to the avoidance of the stick of punishment, keeps the body of the nation running smoothly in a coherent fashion. Disputes are processed through a system of arbitrations, the judicial system, and the social contract is revised and reformed by rule makers, or the legislative, in order to inform the role of law enforcers, the executive. And thus, a unified body of humans have generated a system of mass coordination. A blank slate. It's often said that the cryptocurrency industry is speedrunning the development of finance across history. Starting with a new form of money and working upwards, the cryptocurrency world is learning to reinvent the same financial primitives humans have already discovered in meat space and recreate them in their digital form in the crypto world. This is absolutely true, but I believe it's even grander than that. It's in addition to the recreation of money and finance inside of a pure substrate, we are also rediscovering systems of coordination. The combination of free and open source software and internet native value and value management, aka finance, creates a new kind of sandbox for research and development. I recently wrote a CoinDesk piece about how Ethereum is producing financial innovation at light speeds as a result of the open sandbox for developer experimentation. Open source software is free, and forking, changing, and iterating on open source software costs the absolute minimum amount of resources, time. Through this effort, any developer that produces something of value while experimenting adds something to the common library of knowledge in this space, which only further reduces experimentation and development costs. With thousands of users and billions of dollars only a single transaction away, developers are able to quickly discover either failure or success and move forward. Now replace money and finance with human coordination, and you have the next chapter of humanity. To fork or not to fork? Like the nation state, crypto economic systems, Bitcoin, Ethereum, MakerDAO, Uniswap, Compound, YEARN, YAMS, are perpetually in a state of friction between defection incentives and coordination incentives. These systems are primarily bottom-up structures in which success is determined by the protocol's ability to attract attention and capital from the world around it. No government aid or regulation here. Whether or not a protocol survives is entirely determined by the fitness inside the free market. If a protocol is fit, it will generate coordination incentives that outweigh defection incentives. The moment where defection incentives pass coordination incentives is the moment the protocol dies. We look at the total value locked leaderboard on DeFi Pulse, and we are looking at coordination leaderboards. How strongly does a particular protocol's coordination incentives outweigh their defection incentives? Forking. The low cost of forks is one of the most advantageous characteristics this industry has. When the cost of experimental iteration approaches zero, innovation naturally explodes. Before the vegetable yield farm copycatting of DeFi Summer 2020, there was the proof of work fair launch era in 2013 to 2015. Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, Dogecoin, Bitcoin XT, Bitcoin Classic, Bitcoin Unlimited, Bitcoin Gold, Bitcoin Diamond, Bitcoin Dark, Bitcoin Private, Bitcoin SV, Monocoin, Litecoin Cash, Cloakcoin, Einsteinium, Feathercoin, Peercoin, Novacoin, Blackcoin, Stratus, Greencoin, Vertcoin, Hshare, Nexus, Decred, Digibyte, Syscoin, Redcoin, Elastos, Emergecoin, Grosselcoin, Navcoin, Viacoin, Komodo. Replace all those names with vegetables and you have DeFi Summer 2020. Ethereum is an open sandbox for financial experimentation, where the costs of experimentation and innovation are as close to zero as they have ever been. Not only is there plenty of code available to leverage, but also thousands of users and billions of dollars are always one transaction away from whatever you can build. The YAM story illustrates this well. 5 individuals got together and borrowed code from Compound, Synthetics, Ampleforth, and YEARN to produce a product that garnered hundreds of stakeholding community members and a multi-million-dollar market cap in just 10 days. YAM didn't really fork any of these protocols. The goals of the YAM system, whatever they may be, are materially different from any of the above protocols. Synthetics aims to make a decentralized synthetic asset exchange, Compound a money market, Ampleforth a weird new form of money, YEARN a yield maximizer. But the end goal of all these protocols is a zero-sum game. Maximize value. The goal of Synthetics, YAM, Compound, YEARN, and Ampleforth is number go up. Each of these protocols has a token, and the success of the protocol is directly reflected in the value of their respective token. SNX, YAM, Comp, YFI, Ample. Every system is a value maximizing system, and each system attempts to achieve this in its own way. Value is inherently scarce, and a protocol can only capture so much value before it starts to compete with the value captured by others. Carbon copycats. While YAM's method of achieving this goal is adjacent rather than in opposition to the protocols it borrowed code from, it was also the main inspiration to the fork and fair launch movement, where many protocols were carbon copied with their token swapped out for a new one. Cream forked Compound, SushiSwap forked Uniswap, Based came out of YAMs, and then there's YFII that forked YFI, and then there's YFIII that forked YFII. Suzu of Three Arrow Capitals illustrates this phenomenon with the Euthanasia roller coaster, a theoretical design of a roller coaster that kills its passengers by exposing them to too strong G-forces for too long. The end of DeFi Summer 2020 came when every single major DeFi protocol had 17 forks each, and each of the forks had their own set of forks, which had their own set of forks, etc., etc. At some point, we ran out of emojis. Also, gas sustained 400 GWei for multiple days, putting pretty hard brakes on the Ethereum economy at large. It's highly likely that the significant majority of these forks will bleed into nothingness. The few that make it through the great filter of shitcoinery are going to be the ones that tapped into something novel and also learned how to generate sufficient anti-fork incentives. Fork resistance strategies and defection incentives. Successful protocols will deploy fork resistance strategies in order to achieve the in-group coordination. The fair launch phenomenon was an experiment in spinning up projects with minimal defection incentives, as the Genesis token distribution was hopefully something that rewards stakeholders for their alignment to the protocol. Uniswap's retroactive airdrop of tokens to previous value providers was a fantastic deployment of a defection resistance strategy. Because everyone got their $1,200 universal basic income, everyone loves Uniswap. The concept of fair token distribution was extremely attractive, and it generated significant forking incentives for developers and defection incentives for users and their capital. Liquidity mining and yield farming were extremely lucrative, and even with a low percentage of chance that the protocol and its token not working out, it's still rational to farm the shit out of every single token on the potential upside of becoming a massively coordinating protocol. The mere possibility of this outcome generated the value in the token, which generated the incentive to farm, which contributed to forking and defection incentives. The only problem with this movement was that it created a pro-defection environment. While it was trivial to carbon copy the DeFi darlings, Compound, Uniswap, YEARN, in the hopes of enticing some gamblers who want to take the 3% chance of a 100x gain, the reality was that it was also trivial for someone to carbon copy you and steal all your users and capital in an attempt to offer it to people who didn't get in on your ride. Yield farms learned how to leverage defection incentives, but they ignored the other half of the equation, coordination incentives. Every single crypto economic protocol operates because it has sufficiently strong anti-fork incentives. This doesn't just only apply to DeFi protocols. Fork resistance strategies could also be named as consensus algorithms. Proof of work and proof of stake are two gigantic fork resistance primitives. The costs of mining on the wrong chain or of validating incorrect blocks are incredibly high. In proof of work, you are burning electricity without BTC rewards, and in proof of stake, you are literally burning money instead of receiving it. Pretty strong fork resistance mechanisms. The social layer. The design space for creating anti-fork incentives doesn't stop at well-designed code. The social layer behind a protocol is equally important for generating fork resistance. No coordination group has leveraged the power of the social layer better than Bitcoiners. Bitcoiners, at least the ones on crypto Twitter, have a very firm line drawn in the sand, which signals to the rest of the group what is and what is not appropriate. I do not mean to generalize to all Bitcoiners, but like many in-groups, Bitcoiners are defined by a set of concentric circles, in which the innermost circle are the most radical, the most maximalist, and things get more moderate as you move outwards. The mere presence of the radical centermost circle moves the Overton window of acceptable behavior closer and closer to the goals of hyper-Bitcoinization. Speak well of an alternative protocol? That's a paddling. Express moderation about Bitcoin's future success? That's a paddling. Everything is a shitcoin unless it's Bitcoin. Bitcoin's social layer is one of its greatest features, although people from the outside of the Bitcoiner in-group express significant reservations about this culture's ability to scale with this strategy. Bitcoin's barrier troops. Barrier troops are anti-retreat forces that were located in the rear of the front line to maintain military discipline to prevent the flight of servicemen from the battlefield. Famously, the Soviet Red Army deployed barrier troops who would shoot any retreaters, defectors, in order to generate sufficient defection prevention incentives for these soldiers to never stop fighting Nazi Germany. If you retreat, you die, so you might as well not retreat. And then here we have a tweet from Gavin Andreessen, who is the second individual to kind of carry the Bitcoin mantle after Satoshi himself. And he says, scale Bitcoin in 3 easy steps. 1, scale Ethereum. 2, trustlessly tokenize your Bitcoin. 3, transact using the wrapped tokens on the ETH2 chain. And then Dan Held, a famous Bitcoin maximalist, goes, Gavin isn't a Bitcoiner anymore. Dan Held is one of Bitcoin's barrier troops. Don't you dare defect. This is the same strategy that the Leviathan of a nation state imposes, albeit in a more humane manner, with fines and prisons. If you defect, you go to jail, so don't defect. Punishment, aka the stick, is only one half of the equation. The carrot is all about producing rewards that prevent thoughts of defection from even arising in the first place. Bitcoiners have leveraged the social layer very well to this end. Get enough Bitcoiners together to all claim how Bitcoin will become the world's next de facto currency, and the voice of any skeptic defector gets drowned out by the rest of the in-group. The goal of Bitcoin's social layer is to generate enough FOMO about Bitcoin that no one thinks twice about selling the world's next money. This leaves the potential of memeing it into existence, regardless of the technological capacity of the system to do the job. Value, the OG defection prevention strategy. DeFi protocols on Ethereum generate revenue. The DeFi tokens govern over how the protocols are constructed and therefore have the ability to direct these cash flows as they see fit. Some protocols don't charge fees to the governance token and instead direct 100% of the revenue to the supply side, such as AAVE, Uniswap, or Compound. Other protocols are further along in maturity and are redirecting that captured revenue into their native token, Kyber, Maker, YEARN. Revenue is coordination incentive. If a protocol has revenue coming from its contracts, there is an incentive to be a part of that system. While the costs of forking a DeFi protocol are minimal, no one wants to defect from a system that turns out to be a huge winner. This is the power behind Bitcoin's narrative, and that's why the beloved DeFi protocols that were around before DeFi Summer 2020 are still the dominant protocols, and even the most successful fork farms are distant seconds to the OGs, YEARN being the significant exception. Coordination defection incentive ratio. Behind every coordinating group is a coordination defection incentive ratio. What is the ratio of a group's coordination incentive to defection incentives? If coordination incentives are greater than defection incentives, the protocol grows. If they are lesser, then the protocol reduces. Now, for what is the entire thesis of the article. The spread between coordination incentives and defection incentives is the accessible revenue of a protocol. The more and more a protocol can develop its coordination incentives, the higher percentage of revenue it can capture in its native token. So long as the fees being captured aren't sufficiently high to incentivize defection, and therefore a carbon copy cap, the protocol will continue to capture fees. Previously in Ethereum, there was a frequent conversation about how Ethereum was destined to be a place where the middlemen are cut out and all fees are forked away into nothingness. If anyone built a protocol with a fee in it, it would be forked into an alternative protocol without the fee. And then the protocol would then become a new protocol. And then that protocol would then become the new protocol, because why would anyone use a protocol that has fees in it when there's an alternative without fees? What this conversation was missing was the difficulty in coordinating the migration to an alternative protocol. This is the same reason why we all hate Facebook, but we still can't pick up and move to an alternative social media platform. We're all on Facebook, and coordinating everyone to pick up and move at the same time is too much of a coordination challenge. Where Facebook has users, Uniswap, Aave, Compound, and DAI have liquidity. These protocols all have very strong liquidity moats and act as defection prevention mechanisms. The liquidity behind these protocols is the spread between the greater coordination incentives versus the smaller defection incentives. As these protocols grow in liquidity, they also grow in coordination defection incentive ratios and therefore the fees that they can capture. Bitcoin, a Schelling point of anti-defection. As discussed above, Bitcoin's social layer employs extremely strong social incentives to not defect from the group values. The most extreme Bitcoiners consider all other digital assets other than Bitcoin as inferior assets, or even shitcoins. The reason why the word shitcoin is so frequently used in Bitcoin culture is to signal the intolerance to those who prefer any other asset other than Bitcoin. Bitcoin maximalists, as defined by those that actively denounce all other crypto assets other than Bitcoin, are the Spartan phalanx of crypto assets, not one shitcoin. To the average Bitcoiner, a shitcoin represents the embodiment of defection, a denial of the Bitcoin narrative and the Bitcoin social contract. Shitcoins, shitcoiners, and shitcoinery are all instances of when the Bitcoin narrative broke down and someone defected from the ranks. From Wikipedia, there was a leader in each row of a phalanx and a rear officer who kept the order in the rear. The hoplites had to trust their neighbor to protect them and in turn be willing to protect their neighbors. A phalanx was thus only as strong as its weakest elements. The effectiveness of the phalanx therefore depended on how well the hoplites could maintain this formation in combat and how well they could withstand their ground, especially when engaged against another phalanx. For this reason, the formation was deliberately organized to group friends and family close together, thus providing a psychological incentive to support one's fellows and a disincentive through shame to panic or attempt to flee. The more disciplined and courageous the army, the more likely it was to win. Often, engagements between the various cities of Greece would be resolved by one side fleeing before the battle. I just think that's so funny. Bitcoiners are the embodiment of do not defect, and this is why Bitcoin has really abandoned any interest in improving itself as a technology and seems to be primarily focused on improving its social layer, its narrative. Bitcoiners are extremely smart in encouraging this behavior. The opposite of coordination is defection, and we've all seen what happens during periods of high defection rates, the Euthanasia roller coaster. If we encourage a pro-defectionary environment, we can likely never discover a new Schelling point for coordination. We need to encourage coordination around some commonly shared values, or else we devolve into shitcoinery. While financial experimentation is good, shitcoinery is bad. However, extreme rigidity and intolerance to anyone who is interested in expanding the design space means that defection from the extremely tight in-group is the only possible new choice if one wants to experiment with building something new. This was how Ethereum was created. Vitalik proposed a Bitcoin hard fork to include new opcodes that would make Bitcoin more expressive. Vitalik loves Bitcoin and wanted it to be able to do more things and grow into a larger possible design space. However, this was against the Bitcoiner social contract, and changing Bitcoiner social layer is basically impossible. So Vitalik, quote unquote, defected and made Ethereum, and it has made the innermost concentric circle of Bitcoiners, the maxis, extremely upset to this day that someone dared to defect. Ethereum was the first successful example of coordinated defection, where a group of then Bitcoiners migrated to Ethereum in a coordinated fashion, but without triggering a pro-defection environment which triggers the Euthanasia roller coaster. A bunch of then Bitcoiners metaphorically linked arms and all agreed to take one step away from Bitcoin and to Ethereum, but not one more after that, by participating in the Ethereum crowd sale. Those people chose to coordinate. The Tao. The Tao, often called yin-yang, but this isn't accurate, is called the way in Taoism. Yin, representing chaos, is the black side, and yang, representing order, is the white. The entire universe is built upon a balance between order and chaos, and the Tao, or the way, is the line between them that represents a healthy balance of order and chaos that produces positive outcomes. Defection is chaos, and coordination is order. In order to produce healthy outcomes for the world, you need both. You need coordinated defection. This is how humanity chooses to abandon a previous status quo in the name of a better alternative. When humanity makes the correct choice, it's representative of proper alignment between order and chaos, or defection versus coordination. Order creates hierarchies and structures for humans to depend on and leverage for their well-being. It also creates oppression and inequality. The nation-state is the largest ordered structure we have created so far. Chaos is creative destruction, the recycling and renewing of calcified systems with newer, more modern structures. The Bankless nation is a new ordered structure that is formed out of the chaos of cryptocurrencies and endless games of coordination defection. If we do things right, the Bankless nation can become a new structure that surpasses the organizational capacity of the nation-state, with new mechanisms that are fair, more inclusive, and more scalable. An excerpt from The Three Nation Problem. At the end of the 1800s, Nietzsche proclaimed God is dead. Nietzsche was an atheist and didn't mean that there was a God who had actually died, but rather our idea of one had. After the Enlightenment, the idea of a universe that was governed by physical laws and not by divine providence was now a reality. Philosophy had shown that governments no longer needed to be organized around the idea of the divine right to be legitimate, but rather by the consent or rationality of the governed. That large and consistent moral theories could exist without reference to God. Europe no longer needed God as the source for all morality, value, or order in the universe. Philosophy and science were capable of doing that for us. God is dead was less of a proclamation and more of a warning. Nietzsche was warning that if humanity was no longer organized around God, then we would need to find something different and new to organize around, or else chaos would consume the world. Without the scaffolding of religion, the societal structure would collapse, and rebuilding it would be a long, arduous process filled with debate and conflict. This is exactly what happened. Religion, the main organizing force of the people, was relegated to history without a viable successor to offer an alternative organization schema in order to keep the people of the world stabilized and coherent. The world, absent of any organizational structure, fell into the most bloody and brutal century in human history. Out of this chaos emerged the world order that we know today, democratic nation states that uphold the values of classical liberalism. And with the Bankless nation, the wheel turns yet again. Religion grew out of chaos and turned into calcified, oppressive, non-iterative systems. Humans needed something newer and more modern to organize, and then therefore created the nation state, which iterated and iterated into the liberal democracies that we know today. And now, those in turn have become calcified, oppressive, and non-iterative. And so we choose to defect in a coordinated way into the world of cryptocurrencies and internet-based organizational structures. Eventually, the world of crypto will likely calcify into an oppressive and non-iterative structure, but that won't be for generations. Today, Bitcoin and Ethereum are the iterative, flexible structures we need to coordinate humanity into a better world. All right, guys, let me know in the comments what you think. This is one of the cooler articles I think that I've ever written, so I'm happy to share it with you. So thanks, and make sure to subscribe to the YouTube. Cheers.